About a year ago now, Xbox and Bethesda shadow dropped a game out of nowhere called Hi-Fi Rush, and the internet quickly took notice, for better or for worse. Ever since it came out, platform warring on Twitter went from insufferable to kind of hilarious, and it still comes up in fanboy conversation circles every now and then when they have nothing better to do, considering both of their consoles still have no games. But with rumors spreading around lately about a supposed Xbox exclusive going multi-platform, and a credible leaker flat out claiming that Hi-Fi Rush was coming to the Nintendo Switch, lots of people are talking about the game again like it's launch day when it's almost a year old already. For those somehow out of the loop, Hi-Fi Rush was developed by a Bethesda-owned Japanese studio known as Tango Gameworks, who are basically known for psychological horror games like the Evil Within series and Ghostwire Tokyo. The game was apparently in development since 2017, and the shadow drop was simply a result of Tango thinking not very many people would have liked it. Just look at those Steam reviews. This game was met with overwhelming critical acclaim, and most of the internet fell in love with it. However, there are some people out there who weren't too keen on it. It's okay if you don't like something. Video games are subjective and we all have our opinions. God knows I do. But ever since launch, there's been a vocal minority of people who are dedicated to dunking on it for arbitrary reasons. I'll get this out of the way now. I don't like the platform war and I'm not going to in this video. I think grown men partaking in these autistic debates unironically is a waste of time and dignity, although prodding these basement dwellers on Twitter is really funny. You can play your games on whatever plastic box you want. I don't care. Most of the derogatory shit I say about certain consoles is purely in good fun, and I never hold any of this stuff against others. Do what you want with your own money. I also don't take sides in this shit because I own several of these consoles and play most of my modern games on PC anyways. So if you want to call me an Xbot in disguise, just know that I have no incentive to dick ride for a conglomerate like Microsoft. Exclusives are a pretty common practice in the console space, with the big three making their own games and locking them to their console as a selling point for the console itself. This model has come under massive scrutiny in recent years due to two of the big three making PC ports alongside it, and PC gamers having access to Nintendo's entire catalog anyway thanks to Yuzu and Ryujinx. The way I see it, as long as the company itself or one of its subsidiaries makes the game, then I don't care about exclusivity. Of course, I would love to see all of these games on all platforms, but money talks and that's a very slippery slope, at least in terms of competing consoles. Hi-Fi Rush being published by Bethesda technically makes it a first-party Xbox exclusive thanks to the Microsoft buyout in 2020. Certain fans on the PlayStation side of things are typically very hostile towards competing exclusives, Xbox especially. I'm not saying that all PlayStation fans are like this, again, vocal minority, but they've become so prevalent during the 9th console generation that's a bit of a PlayStation fan stereotype now. Of course they were quick to dunk on this game, and to add fuel to the fire, the game launched merely days apart from a game with partial exclusivity to PlayStation, Square Enix's Forspoken. This technically isn't in the same category as Hi-Fi Rush, since Square is independent from PlayStation. They just simply signed a console exclusivity contract, likely because Square had no faith in this fucking game and needed to recoup their losses any way they could. Hi-Fi Rush vs. Forspoken was practically a meme in the gaming space at the time, specifically with PC gamers since they had access to both. Forspoken didn't even make the top sellers list on Steam despite a major marketing campaign, while Hi-Fi Rush blew up the charts the day it came out despite being a shadow drop. Not to mention Forspoken as a game was just really not good. For some reason, PlayStation fanboys have this weird habit of defending an exclusive with lukewarm reception like their fucking life depends on it, which, even from a console warring degenerate point of view, really doesn't make a whole lot of sense here, because PlayStation didn't even make that game, it was Square Enix. They did the same thing with The Last of Us 2 back in 2020, and you probably remember how that shitstorm went down. I'm not going to talk much more about Forspoken, as this video is about Hi-Fi Rush, and I couldn't care less about that game. These fanboys don't care about quality. In fact, I don't think they care that much about video games in general, because some of these people's PSN accounts show that they barely play more than 2 hours of their precious exclusives they constantly gloat about. All they care about is winning some kind of popularity pissing contest on the Bird app, so these guys wasted zero time dogpiling on Hi-Fi Rush, not so much pointing out flaws or giving constructive criticism, but more just tossing insults at it or bringing up irrelevant bullshit like sales numbers. You see, that's the thing, console kiddies don't like talking about quality because that would imply that they play these games to begin with. They bring up stuff that the average consumer couldn't give two shits about, like the marketing budget, sales figures, development costs, or how many people bought the game versus how many played it through Game Pass. You see, they sound like businessmen, when in reality they have their head up their own ass obsessing over the analytics of a game that their favorite company didn't even make. The big contentious aspect in this stupid Twitter war, however, was the price tag and release model. PlayStation was one of the companies leading the charge into pushing AAA video game prices to $70 instead of $60, and of course these fanboys would defend that practice with statements like, "You're poor," "Inflation," "I would pay $100," "My economy," "Game Pass is for poor people." The higher the price, the better the game. And other baseless arguments like that, which only really stem from their own personal preferences for Sony's hardware and game output. By the way, that last argument is a massive fucking lie, as ever since $70 games started becoming commonplace, the bar of quality went right down the fucking toilet. Probably the biggest example of this is Bethesda's very next release that was only a few months after Hi-Fi Rush, Arcane Studios' Redfall. See, I'm not a Microsoft shill, they made one of the worst AAA releases in recent memory priced at $70. Redfall came out and was so bad, Phil Spencer had to publicly apologize. Now why am I bringing up AAA games being $70? Well, Hi-Fi Rush was not only on Xbox Game Pass day one like all of Xbox's releases, but the price tag was not $70. Nor was it $60, $50, or even $40. This game was a cool 30 bones, and still ended up delivering one of the most visually bombastic, artistically creative, and mechanically deep games I've seen from a AAA publisher in years. Hi-Fi Rush absolutely kicks the $70 games argument into the bin and lights the bin on fire. This led these people to give Hi-Fi Rush the derogatory label of being a budget game. And of course fans took that label with pride, as being affordable in the middle of one of the worst economic depressions in history is certainly not a bad thing. And whatever the game's budget was, it clearly went to good use. Seriously, this game looks expensive with its visuals, but it's cheaper than games with budgets that were likely lower. Now, why would anybody have a problem with this kind of development model? Well, that can be attributed to something I like to call the AAA brain rot. It's especially common with PlayStation fanboys since they always snort Sony's exclusive output like it's cocaine, and Sony is basically allergic to putting out anything that isn't multi-$100 million blockbusters with an emphasis on storytelling over interesting gameplay. I'm not writing off their entire catalog, as I really like the Insomniac Spider-Man games, and I'd argue Xbox's exclusive lineup has paled in comparison since the 360 era. But it tends to be Sony's only output now compared to the PS1 and 2 generations where they crafted whatever the fuck they felt like no matter how experimental and weird it was. The AAA brain rot is basically a mindset that anything that isn't this grandiose huzzah of hyper-realistic visuals and 30-minute unskippable cutscenes with boat rowing sections added on is automatically bad or lower class. Basically the thought process of a spoiled rich person who thinks they're above everyone else because they have an iPhone, wear Supreme clothes, or drive a Lamborghini. They're closed-minded morons who care more about the price tag or budget of their luxuries rather than their quality.
I don't give a fuck if I go blind. I don't need to see the price tag anyway. This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
You see this with Ubisoft's Twitter comments recently too, since they're releasing a brand new 2D Prince of Persia game and people are writing it off as bad since it's not an open world slop fest and actually looks like a fun game. It's actually being done by the Rayman Legends team, so here's to hoping that's good. Back to Hi-Fi Rush though, this mindset mostly comes from the fanboys, as those outside of the PlayStation circle I've seen dunk on this game are seemingly doing it for the bait, or just reek of skill issue because they suck at keeping up with the rhythm. The worst I've seen from the fanboys is just, "Oh, this low-budget Game Pass fodder is teeth-rotting candy. I'll take my full-course meal of Mary Jane's jawline and offensive slurs in the files, with a side of overpriced remote play tablet, thank you." You know, just shit to roast somebody for online easily, but recently I came across this tweet. This tweet actually pisses me the fuck off, and is the main reason I started writing this script in the first place. Congratulations, Hyped! You managed to live in my head rent-free for a few days over Vidya. It's a AA game. It's in the same conversation as Sackboy or Sifu. No dude, something as derivative and bland as Sackboy's Big Adventure is nowhere near the same ballpark as Hi-Fi Rush. Maybe it's just me, but I was not impressed with Sackboy when I first played it for the first time last year. If you want a linear 3D platformer, go play Crash 4 or Mario 3D World. It shouldn't be mentioned against games like Spider-Man and Final Fantasy.
Wrong again.
It was critically acclaimed at launch, actually won something at the Sellout Awards unlike Spider-Man, and was actually finished at launch too. Spider-Man 2 players still don't even have New Game Plus. That is fucking sad. Only a few people care about these games is such an ignorant statement that shows how much of a snob you are. This game grabbed the gaming community's attention instantly upon release and rocketed to the top of the Steam sales charts, had millions of downloads through Game Pass, and not only is Bethesda making merchandise for the game, more merchandise than its AAA mass-marketed younger brother Redfall, but Valve is even using Hi-Fi Rush as marketing material for the Steam Deck. Finally, the leading line. People give Hi-Fi Rush more credit than it deserves. According to him, this labor of love, which took over half a decade to develop, made by a passionate team that followed their own vision without answering to executive mandates or social justice writing organizations, doesn't deserve respect because it's a AA release. Welcome to 2024 gaming discourse. Hope you brought alcohol. You can genuinely fuck right off with that statement. Game development is not easy, and doing such a crazy out there game like Hi-Fi Rush, syncing everything to the game's multiple soundtracks, is a programming nightmare that I still don't understand how they pulled off. I know this kind of reeks of think of the developer's feelings kind of energy, but here's the thing. Tango Gameworks is a Japanese studio, and Japanese culture, from what I can gather, is much more apologetic than it is here in the States. They take criticism far more seriously and hold themselves to a crazy high standard, and you bet your ass Tango were a little anxious about Hi-Fi Rush. They kept the game a secret for over 5 years and shadow dropped it without much of a peep from the studio themselves because they didn't think people would like it. Tango Gameworks was known for realistic horror games, and coming out of nowhere with this radically different kind of game with blazing anime visuals, a rocking soundtrack featuring bands like Nine Inch Nails and Joy Formidable, and a crazy concept of a hack and slash with rhythm elements, led to the studio being uncertain about reception. That review score says all that needs to be said. People adored Hi-Fi Rush, including myself, and no amount of straw grasping and budget shaming is going to change our minds. I don't give the slightest fuck how much this game costed to develop because I'm the consumer and that's not my problem. Hi-Fi Rush absolutely fucking bodies any of the repetitive, uninspired AAA dog slop you sheep lap up on a yearly basis for $70. I tried my hardest to stay civil here, and like I said at the beginning, you can like whatever you want. But if you genuinely shit on this game just because it doesn't have the budget of James Cameron's Avatar, you're part of the problem. We stand by, defend, and rally for games like Hi-Fi Rush because of what it stands for. Creatively driven games that don't conform to the standards of a soiled industry obsessed with squeezing as much money out of everyone as possible. The Japanese already have to deal with land whale localizers from California who want to sanitize and vandalize their art for arbitrary socio-political reasons, so why the fuck should they have to sacrifice their own passion project to please ignorant saps like you? Our modern industry has almost no in-between for AAA blockbusters and pixelated proof-of-concept games made by one person, so you certainly aren't helping the situation by ignorantly dunking on the game because of its budget. It's like you fucking people don't even care about its quality, just the budget. Surely you would absolutely love Redfall, it seems like the perfect fit for you, especially at the pristine price of $70. And even if you prefer AAA games, that's fine, but don't talk down to others for liking Hi-Fi Rush or comparing it to AAA games for a very good reason, I might add, and certainly don't insinuate that it doesn't deserve respect due to some number, which isn't the game's review score. Hi-Fi Rush to me is more than just a high-quality game, it's a wake-up call to AAA publishers. Having a tight, solid experience with its own identity is far superior than the same copy-and-paste barren wastelands that chug in performance because of the main character's peach fuzz and shit broken and unfinished for full price. That would be one thing if it's just a good game that works without strings attached. But the fact that the game itself is just that amazing shows that unsustainable budgets, inflating prices for the consumer, and crunching the hell out of developers only to ship out one of the worst rated games of the year are all outdated practices that need to stop. In a world where companies want to charge $70 for yearly sports games with pay-to-win microtransactions, game-breaking bugs, and recycled assets, I'm absolutely baffled that you people would have this much of a problem in vendetta with Hi-Fi Rush. Anyway, sorry about that little spurg of mine, I got a little carried away there. I wanted to make this video after replaying the game again and seeing discussion resurface online. Next video's production is still in the recording and scriptwriting phase, so that release date of early March has not moved a muscle. I'll see you then.
Good for your soul.
Oh, please. I have no soul.